After making the surprising trade last year, sending Tyrese Halliburton to the Pacers to receive Domantas Sabonis, it had seemed that the Kings were making moves to finally break that record-holding playoff drought. But for that year, it just wasn't meant to be, as the pairing of Fox and Sabonis struggled early on, going 10 for 16 after the trade, which kinda signaled to the Kings that some changes were still needed, and surprisingly, they actually managed to make those moves in the offseason to finally form a formidable team that was able to break that 16-year playoff drought, while finishing third in the West, before going on to get knocked out in the first round by the 6-seeded Warriors. And although many Kings fans may have chalked this exit up as a W, if you really look at how the Kings got to this point, you may start to see how some of those fans are pretty delusional. But before we get into that, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subs so we can finally get that YouTube bag. As we mentioned, the Kings had made excellent moves in the offseason, starting with the utilization of their pick in last year's draft, selecting Keegan Murray with the 4th pick, which at first kinda seemed like another senseless head office move from the franchise, as it was pretty widely accepted from people around the league that Jaden Ivey would be the one selected with the 4th pick. And not to mention, Vegas odds even had Shaedon Sharpe ahead of Keegan Murray. But come Summer League, Murray was out there to silence the doubters, as he dominated in the 4 games he played, averaging 23, 7, and 2, on 50% shooting from the field and 40 from 3, and then going on to win MVP of the Summer League. But the Kings weren't done there, as they were able to steal Kevin Huerter from the Hawks, which really was the final piece to the squad. But once the season actually started, it had seemed that these moves had yet again fallen short of their expectations, until the team finally came together, going on a 7-game win streak in November. And that success stayed pretty consistent, and even excelled to the point where they were one of the top teams in the West, with the beam lighting up the Sacramento sky pretty regularly. That was until they finally made it back to the playoffs, going up against a struggling Warriors team who were collectively still feeling the pain of a Draymond Green sucker punch. The Kings did win the first 2 games at home, putting Steph Curry down 2-0 for the very first time in his career. But of course, that didn't last long, as the Warriors went on to win the next 3 games before inevitably putting the Kings out of their pain in 7, with an all-time performance from Steph Curry. And just like that, the Kings were out of the playoffs as quick as they came in. And I know to some fans this may seem like a win still, but truthfully it's not, as the first round exit still kind of falls short of the win now mindset that the Sacramento Kings were trying to make, as the moves that they made didn't really put them any closer to being a serious threat once the postseason comes. As the big asset they acquired last year, Domantas Sabonis, had a pretty solid disappearing act, looking like Ben Simmons without any defense or really passing capability, having the second worst plus-minus on the team with a -62 on the series, and Kevin Huerter looking pretty unplayable for most of the series, while simultaneously sticking Keegan Murray in the corner designated to jack up 3-pointers, despite Murray actually showing real athleticism throughout the entire season, being very capable of crashing the paint. And all of this left Fox by himself as really the only option on offense, which is something that the Warriors had picked up on, smothering him on plays and sticking him like glue on inbound passes, which was the main reason the Kings weren't able to take a 3-1 lead in a tight Game 4 that came down to a final shot that was given to Harrison Barnes due to the Warriors predicting correctly that the play was drawn up for Fox. And ultimately, this was their downfall. So yeah, it's nice that the Kings were able to break the streak, but at a certain point, that won't be enough in the eye of fans.
If the Kings want to avoid being the team that hangs around the top of the standings yet gets its heart broken every playoffs, they'll have to double down on the win now mentality immediately. The sad but true reality is that the Kings are stuck with multiple windows that don't match up. Keegan Murray looks like he'll eventually be a stud, but by the time he gets to that level, the other 2 stars may not be at the peak of their games anymore. And while it might be tempting to run it back with the same squad, plus maybe some minor additions, I don't believe that Fox and Sabonis alone have what it takes to make a deep run in the West, let alone win a chip eventually. Sabonis is definitely at the peak of his game at the age of 27, and probably won't get too much better than he is now. Similarly, 25-year-old De'Aaron Fox, as a point guard with a game based on outspeeding people, will have to expand his skill set fast if he doesn't want to fall behind the rest once his athleticism dips in a role as competitive as point guard. Luckily for the Kings, they do have a boatload of cap space available next year, and also a number of highly tradable assets that they can use to go all in on being a top team in the West, or in other directions. The Kings definitely have to do something, but they have a few ways they could go. The first thing they could do is probably going to be an unpopular one. But it seems like the only way they could nab another top-level player is to trade Keegan Murray and other assets for somebody that can contribute right now to playoff wins. Everybody knows that he's going to be good, and it's going to sting if or probably when he blossoms into a star. However, the Kings have already made a somewhat questionable move in trading Tyrese Haliburton for Sabonis, which was a great fit for the team, but probably threw away a good bit of future value given that Haliburton already looks like he's bringing more impact to the court than Sabonis. Unfortunately, this means that they may have to do the same and target another player with all-star potential for a proper big three. A good fit for the Kings would be targeting a two-way forward capable of defending and scoring, with an example being OG Anunoby. Being almost 26, his timeline matches up a lot better with Fox and Sabonis, and the team could age and develop into something deadly in the next few years. OG for Murray especially could be useful for both teams, as it seems like the Raptors are entering a new era after riding the high of their championship in 2019, and will definitely be looking for young talent in the coming years. This is only one example, but there are tons of forwards in the league ready to take that proper leap into stardom given the right position. What the Kings could also do is flip Sabonis for a younger prospect that better matches up with Keegan Murray's timeline. This is riskier for sure, as we don't quite know if Keegan Murray will develop into someone worthy of building a team around. But at the same time, the appeal of this decision is that you don't risk letting Sabonis walk when his contract runs out in the 2024 offseason. This would be disastrous to the Kings' mission of finally building a team worthy of the spotlight after years of mediocrity. Ultimately, this likely won't happen, as the fans in Sacktown would be furious if the team went back into development mode after 1 year of big promises and a playoff berth. Of course, waiting and seeing how things pan out next year is always an option. This, however, may be the riskiest option. What if Keegan Murray somehow regresses? What if Sabonis walks? If this filthy combo hits the Kings by the end of next season, the Haliburton trade will be almost entirely in vain, and the Kings will be back to Fox balling out somewhere around the 8th seed. The Kings definitely know this, so expect something to happen this offseason or early into next season. The Kings definitely have enough assets to finish their job of constructing a competing roster that history might just remember.